Joe! Joe on Joe is the only podcast where Joe talks about Joe. And now, your host, Joe Slepsky.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the, the inaugural episode of Draw with Joe. This is the Joe and Joe podcast, where normally in audio only, we cover everything about G.I. Joe. We started with the Sunbolt cartoons, we did DIC, we did Extreme, and I've covered a lot of the G.I. Joe comic books, all the Marvel stuff, and we've been working through the Blackthorne stuff. And it's me, your host, Joe Slepsky. And so we've been working on the Blackthorne stuff, and Blackthorne did 3 issues of How to Draw G.I. Joe. They did How to Draw Transformers. They did Star Wars. They probably did a couple other ones I can't think of right now. And these books were a lot of fun. In fact, these books were, I drew a lot from them when I was a kid. So I thought it'd be fun to give this a shot. So this is, we'll see how this works. I've never done video blog podcasts for this. So as far as audio content, this is going to be streamed on my regular audio podcast. I urge everyone to go to our YouTube channel, YouTube/Joe on Joe Pod, to, check it out, because it'll be hosted there. It's also going to be hosted on our Patreon, which is patreon.com/Joe on Joe Pod. We'll have the video hosted there. You can watch it there. And then as far as I'm going to try to make interesting audio. So if it's not a great listen, I apologize profusely. My shows, I work hard to keep them, professional, tight, whatever the word would be. As far as segments and perspective, and very much why you're there for it. So this is going to be me flexing my brain in real time to figure out how to talk drawing and how to talk G.I. Joe, and with flying by the seat of our pants after 8 years. And no, I'm not on camera, but it's not for any deceptive reasons. It's because I've set up the camera and I don't really have a camera ready office. So right now you're staring at this beautiful book. Here's my hands. I'm excited. We're going to cover General Hawk today. And you see, I got a couple of pencils ready to go. I've got an old Spider-Man pencil. I've also got a Elvis Taking Care of Business pencil. We're going to use the Elvis pencil today. You know who else loved Elvis? The Movies in a Meal podcast, because they just turned off a little air purifier there. They are a movie podcast that everyone here needs to listen to. They're the wonderful sponsors for this show. They've covered all the movies. I'm sure they did Elvis. I'm sure they did G.I. Joe. You need to follow them. Movies in a Meal podcast. They're all absolutely wonderful. They're really great. They don't just cover movies. They cover TV series. I'm sure they're doing Fallout, which I just finished. We just watched Fallout last week. So good. And what did we see this weekend? Oh, we saw that movie Abigail this weekend, which was really surprisingly good. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I'll bet you those guys liked it a lot. So Ben and the gang, give them a listen. Movies in a Meal podcast. Help support this show, because they support this show by supporting their show, if you know what I'm saying. Other than that, I think we just dive right in. I think we just get into this. New the software I'm using gives me like a quick half-hour recording thing. I'm doing what am I using? I'm using Microsoft Clip Champ, which I didn't even know existed on this computer. So that was cool. I don't have a streaming setup as far as, again, Twitch or YouTube streamers and stuff. It's just not what I do. And then when I last week I was a guest on the wonderful podcast What's on Joe Mind, and that's easy. They use StreamYard. I just go through their stuff, but I don't have any of that set up. So we're trying this, and so far, I think it's going to work. And if not, figure something out for next week. So I'm digging this. This is the official How to Draw G.I. Joe. get some lights in here. So the sun's starting to go down a little bit. Step-by-step instructions to draw each character. Published by Blackthorne Publishing. You guys know me as an intrepid podcaster, but when I was a youth, and by youth I mean the first 20 years of my life, I thought I was going to be an artist. Did a lot of art classes. Had a cartoon comic strip in college. Post college, pursued a couple things. Try to ignite things here and there. Obviously I talk about comics a lot. Love comics, so I've got a background in drawing a little bit. I have not drawn in years at this point. You're seeing this pencil right now. I decided I warmed up a little bit, but for the most part, this is the first thing I've tried to draw in quite a few years. So don't judge me on the quality, or blame Blackthorne for being unable to teach me. Let's put it that way. I had to dig out my old sketch pad. Had to dig out my my drawing utensils. It's funny. This is so you guys know this wedding ring. Look out, girls. Taken. I've had a drawing table set up at every place I've lived for my entire life until a few years ago when I decided to kind of, not to be too blunt or too sad, but like give up the dream, so to speak. So I finally got rid of a drawing table. And I've always owned a drawing table since I was like 14 years old or 15 or something like that. Yeah, drawing's weird. Art's weird. Art sticks with you. It never leaves you. And I know there's a lot of you out there that are very talented. A lot of you out there who do it for a living. So I'm speaking to the choir there. But what I've always said to everybody is anyone can draw. You don't get discouraged. You just take it a little bit at a time, and you literally get better every time you do it. And better is always also, it's always a very subjective term. So don't judge by the output, judge by the enjoyment that you're getting from doing it. So without further ado, we're going to jump in here and do welcome to episode 1 of Draw with Joe on the Joe and Joe podcast. I definitely got all these books. I got the first 2 when I was a kid. I think I got the third one a little later. Published in 1987 by Blackthorne. Written and designed by Dennis M. Francis and Andrea LaFrance. So I'm assuming that means they're the artists on this. I think it's done pretty well. This issue covers Major Blood, Hawk, and a Sky Striker. Today we're just going to be dealing with Hawk and probably just his face. These first 2 pages are great because this is, remember, it's a how to draw. So you're talking to a lot of kids who just don't have a lot of experience, right? And there's some written stuff here that really gives you a pick-me-up, like anything, you can learn anything. It just takes concentration. It's difficult to capture an image, blah, 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 all that stuff. The reason they have these grids on there is because grid is a great way for people to learn how to draw to start with, because you're using grids. You can eyeball and like match what's in that grid to what's in the grid that you're drawing. I believe that's how a lot of like murals are done, like industrial murals and things on the side of the sides of buildings. Also, I love this. Xerox copies of your finished work and letters are always appreciated. Please address them to Blackthorne Publishing. And then they give an address in El Cajon, California. So who knows? Maybe we'll drop one in there. I've mailed a few things on the show, and I've never heard back from anyone based on like fan letters that we saw in some of the comics. I never heard from anyone. So we'll see how it happens here. They've got a page here that talks about teaching the basic human form. These books also remind me of, there's like a meme joke that goes around, and it's like how to draw fill in the blank, Deadpool or Wolverine or whatever. And it's super sketchy, circles and dots and stuff like that. And then the next picture is like a fully rendered by a professional artist drawing of Wolverine. And they're like, see, you just drew Wolverine. That makes me laugh. It's kind of that way on this book. So this is how to draw Hawk's face. And this is what we're going to feature and focus on today. It's kind of that way, but not really. It's just that they don't spend a lot of time. I'll critique the book this way. They don't spend a lot of time talking about like how to get the shapes of the pieces of the head. They say here's an oval, here's your lines for measurement, and then they say draw in the rest. Which is, as valid as anything, right? But you know, it could be a little I feel like they could be a little more in depth is the word I'm looking for. So start out, there's a little trucker across the street. Start out by drawing an oval to describe Hawk's head, adding 2 lines below to indicate the neck. So we're looking at this drawing here, right? So we've got this oval. So we're going to do an oval there. Happy little oval to get a little Bob Ross on you. It's that's oval enough. Adding 2 lines below to indicate the neck, and 2 lines below. I don't see where they drew 2 lines below to indicate the neck. But add a straight line, divide his head with vertical and horizontal lines. So we know this. So his head's going to go there. Vertical and horizontal lines to place the center line in the eye line. Add a straight line for the shoulders across the point 1/4 of the center line below the chin. So divide his head with vertical and horizontal lines. They also do this on a little angle if you see this, because they have his head's not, he's not looking straight into the camera. So they don't talk about that here, that you're actually drawing a little bit to a vanishing point. But like the vanishing point would be like way out here. That would be like there. And for a lesson in vanishing point, ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be his chin line. We'll say the vanishing point somewhere over here. For tips on vanishing points, talk to someone else. No, that's the vanishing point is the. Oh, and this, by the way, this pencil is old as hell. So erasure is going to be used by these old. Oh my gosh, this eraser is so old too. Like just these. Look at this. Look at this. This eraser is so old it melted. It just melted into my. Oh, it melted onto my pens. That's how this is. This has been living in my box. This has been living in my box of goodies for a little while. Anyway, so okay, so those are going to be our guidelines. We'll do that. There you go. We'll see how that works. Those 2 lines below is to indicate the neck. I genuinely have no idea what they're talking about because I don't see that in the picture. At a straight line for the shoulders, cross a point 1/4 of the center line length below the chin. So that's about right there below the chin. That's his chin. 1/4. There you go. Draw in his eyes, centering each about halfway between the center line and the side of the oval. So they said here, we're going to extend this oval a little bit because I think we went a little small. So we're going to give him a hairline here. And we're going to do his nose. Tip of his nose. Tip of his nose. It's going to be about here. And then tip of his lip is going to be about here. Okay. So now we're still dealing with, maybe those are the 2 lines that they were talking about. So draw in his eyes, centering each about halfway between the center line and the side of the oval. So about halfway between. So that's the center line. That's the side of the oval. So we're going to draw in his eyes. It's funny. A lot of people start differently when they draw. About halfway between. Like they start with different body parts. And I often start with the eyes and the eye, like the furrow of the brow. And I think that's because it centers where I want the person to be looking. But also, it determines, his eyes are way too big. It determines attitude a lot that I found. There's a lot of attitude there. Are they angry? Are they upset? Are they sensitive to your plight? Are they wary? And I've always thought a lot of that is in the eyes. Now, I'm not saying I've ever been able to do that super, super well, but that has always guided my starting point. And it also tends to guide the angle, doing some eyelid work here, the angle of the drawing, which can often be very affected by the angle of the artist. It's literally the angle of the artist. So literally, as you're sitting there, how are you addressing the board? Is the board on a vertical plane? Is it flat? For reference here, so you guys know, this is laying totally flat. I'm not. I normally would be over it a little bit for my own comfort, like, more like literally above it, but that's absolutely where the camera is. So I'm drawing at this from a distance. So I'm not using that as an excuse, but I think that's going to make my angles a little weird because that is not what I'm used to like seeing, you know what I mean? Like literally watching how I draw, like what the effect is. But sometimes when you shift, you have to be careful that your drawing doesn't shift perspective along with it. Because I've seen that a lot. I know in drawings that I do, but or done, but you see it a lot in let's say rookie, but in new guys in their drawings. You see that they're like they're wait a minute. I say new guys. You also saw it a lot in Snake Eyes Dead Game. But like where like the head's going this way, but then the feet are kind of going this way, and the torso's kind of going that way. For me, a lot of times that comes from angle, the way you're addressing the board, not drawing it all at the same time. Maybe doing a piece and coming back to it. Anyway, so we just did the center line and the side of the oval nose line falls with 2/3 away. Drawing his eyes. Halfway ears fit between the nose line and the bottom of the eyes. So they're actually saying go ahead and draw everything here. So we're gonna sally forth here. I think we put his nose. That's a little small, so I'm gonna move his nose line up here. Again, adjusting on the fly is also fun because I think based on the size of his eyes, I feel like his nose should be there, and then his mouth should be about there. So we're gonna do that. So Hawk's got a bit of a broken nose. Oh, you know what? I take all that back. I might have been preemptively. Yeah, you know what? I take that back. Nah, I don't know. Whatever. Don't judge me. How dare you? So we're drawing his nose in now. Get his nostril in place. Noses are very tricky. And I find noses are often very much a indicator of someone's style, and that's style as in their personal signature, not quality. You know what I mean? Like, it's not a judgment of quality. It's literally a judgment of recognizing an artist and their style, like how they do their noses. I think that's always that's one of the tells for me. And when I'm trying to identify artists, when you look at comics and stuff, I like to be able to kind of eyeball and see who the artist is, or who their influences are, because you get that a lot too. So this is all, we're gonna get there. So we're doing his little, what's that divot called? There's a name for it. I don't remember. Forgot to do this. He's got a little, give him a little under eye, and that gives you a little age. And you gotta go with a little bit. So that's right underneath the eye. The what is that called? That is called it's not your, these aren't dimples. It's like it's your mouth, but it's kind of like the frown lines. I don't know, but it's the part of the face that I always forget to draw. And then when you add it to a drawing, it's always like, oh yeah, that makes everything. That really makes it look more real. Which, the more you draw, the more you learn little things that accent your drawing, that that really give it life and give it depth. Very little things like teeth, but just the way to accent the teeth, right? You don't have to draw each tooth. You find a little accent there, and then it adds a little bit of realism to the drawing. Because remember, the one thing to remember, I mean, and I just, not always, what I'm saying here is, obviously everyone can choose to draw differently, but what you're drawing a representation of the character. You're not drawing, it's not the real thing, right? So what does that mean? That means your job is to find tips, tricks, and um, visual shortcuts, I guess, to convey the character that you are looking to convey. Oh, it's a long way of saying, draw hawk. But when you look at, especially some of the more like impressionistic comic book artists, look at what they're doing. They're using their own style, their own skill set to convey to you an image to convey to you the idea of General Hawk. And General Hawk is something that exists, in one medium, cartoon, comic book for sure. But that's a medium presented by moving images and, flat images, but a toy, right? So something you hold in your hand. And then when you're talking about conveying them here, you're talking about taking a 3D thing that's in your hand, or a live action moving thing that we all see on TV with, green and browns and all that. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of ways to convey what General Hawk looks like on the show. And you're translating it to a page. So you can achieve that with photorealism, right? you could try to get, like you could completely copy a Sunbow drawing. Totally could. And that'd be fun. And then it would look like you were aping it. In fact, if you look at old animation studios, like it wasn't what's your interpretation of Popeye. It was you need to draw Popeye exactly how Seeger drew Popeye. And that's how you got a job drawing Popeye. It's called being on model versus being off model. So now they're saying draw in his hairline, and we established that was going to be his hairline. I think his hairline is going to be a little bit higher. See, I'm a little bigger. I'm already working a little bigger than normal, or than I think we anticipated. But we're going to do his hairline there. This is roughen the hair, indicate the shape of his nose, mouth, sideburns, collar, add pupils and highlights to his eyes. See, now they're saying add pupils. I just straight up drew his eyes first time. So that's funny. The way they stage this book is they talk about like it being bold lines, and you could see that it's bolder where they want you to draw at that point. I think I'm just jumping ahead because A, first time doing it. B, cognizant of the time. We're going to give him a little head here. That's my dog, Mary Jane Watson. She's 15 years old, and she has some breathing issues. So she wheezes a lot, unfortunately. We're going to run out of time too. They say she got some water on her lungs. There's not much they can do for her at 15. I guess when you're younger, there's a procedure or something they can get in there and suck it out. But at 15, she's a trooper. You've heard her on my show before. She's my best friend, and I hope everyone has opportunity to have a cool dog like Mary Jane, because she is the best. My name is Peaches, and I'm the best. So we gotta give him his neck. So this is the other thing too. Cool. The other thing too, when you're doing necks, you see how like they've blocked out like the ear and the jaw are its own thing, and then you're giving them a neck that starts on the outside of the jaw. So what you're doing is you're making them more muscular, right? Thicker the neck, the more muscular looking dude. If you could totally do it here, and then he's a little skinnier, a little scrawnier. And then this side is they are saying the neck should stay. And maybe that's the two lines I think they were talking about. The neck is pretty much staying in line with his jaw, so he doesn't look like a monster. But if you were doing like Roadblock, his neck might bulge out a little further because he's even more muscular than Hawk. But if you're doing a Lady J, she might be a little thinner. She might be a little more narrow than any of the guys. And we're doing a little Adam's apple work here, and that goes up to the line. So I'm going to pause here. There might be a glitch in the art. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. So I've got like the way this Clip Champ works. It's got like 30-minute breaks. So picking up pretty much where we left off. I didn't draw anything further. Yeah. So where are we at here? General Hawk. We did that. We did his neck. We want to give him a little bit of a collar here. Now this is actually, it's funny. This is actually, it is General Hawk. That's who they're promoting that we're drawing here. But this is really Hawk in his old t-shirt, right? This is Hawk in his green shirt. He's not in his bomber jacket, etc. This is just a little profile pic of Hawk. So I'd say that needs to be that's a little shaved down a little bit. So yeah, so there's a Hawk there. But you could see it's a little disjointed. And he's more of a Cro-Magnon man, I think, than originally meant. Tighten up all the details and erase your construction lines, or lay a piece of tracing paper over your rough drawing and redraw only the finished forms. Well, let's try this, guys. This is the other thing too that I never did. My tracing lines were terrible. So when I had my comic strip, in college, I never used tracing lines. I did use a lot of blue line. If you're not familiar with blue line, the like a light blue. I think I got one of these laying somewhere. If you're an artist, you're like, I know what you're talking about. Shut up. But it's a marker, actually. It's a blue marker, and I don't see one laying around. But it's essentially, for the most part, it's actually this blue. Really, it's really that blue. But it's a marker, and you see it if you looked at if you looked at like artwork, you've seen these little blue lines drawn there, right? Well, that blue is actually it can't be picked up by Xerox's photostats. So back in the day, before digital drawing and things like that, if I had drawn these blue lines if I had drawn these tracing lines in blue line with my blue pen, or blue marker rather, when I finished this drawing and took it over to my Xerox machine to hand into an editor at the newspaper or whatever, it literally would not show up. There could be a million blue lines everywhere, and I'll try to find one. I don't know if I have one with any ink in it, but they have pencils too. It's not just markers; they have pencils too, and none of the blue shows up on it's un-Xeroxable, which is great. So I did that. That's how I taught myself to draw fast and faster and for the newspaper and all that stuff. So I used blue line a ton. So I was never very good at like lightly erasing, pencil lines. The flip would be is the way a lot of, and actually I believe most comic book art was done, is that, like, let's say you hand this in, so they might do a Xerox of it for sure, but I know that for a fact that there were a lot of stuff where back in the day, especially, artists, the pencilers rather, would draw this and they'd be like, all right, here's my hawk, and then the inkers would come in and they would straight up, I don't even know if there's any ink in this, to be fair. Wow, there's ink in there. And then they would just go over the pencil line entirely. And then once the ink dried, they would then erase the pencils. So there's I believe there's a lot of Kirby pages that are like that, almost all the early Kirby stuff. It's like Mike Royer or Vinnie Coletta, what you're getting is the finished inks, and the pencils have been actually erased away, which is crazy. But it's, for production, it's kind of how it was done. They kind of needed to what was it, function over form or form over function. So we're not going to do inks today, but I do have a nice Copic set, so maybe we will do inks. But yeah, that's it. So there's still plenty of trace lines in here, and I've erased some lines that I would prefer to have kept, but I don't know. That's my General Hawk. He's a little beefier. You could see that his nose here, you see I was warming up, figuring it out. That's all disjointed. Like I would move that in a little bit. That's, like, well, we have a pencil, so let's do it. All right. So move that in a little bit. That helps somewhat. Let's get that back in there. Yeah. I mean, there's some stuff here that ain't perfect. But there you go. General Hawk, everybody, or at least a approximation of a smiling blonde guy, because like, let's see, on this next page, that's still General Hawk. It's really just a blonde, but this dude, yeah, like this version of him, like you draw that and you're like, oh, that's General Hawk. This is just, oh, hey, I drew a face, but hey, got to start somewhere, right? So we forgot to do this. Got to give him all that neck muscle. Got to get him all that neck meat. There you go. That actually leans it out a little bit. Still a little too bulky in my taste. And then, yeah, we were talking about angles earlier. Like, you could see his eyebrow. This part for me, it's flatter and up, and then his head is too far down. In the drawing here, his head is more forward because the camera's perched a little above. So like there was a little more, there's a little more, back in that head versus the directions that I took that. But a lot of that is me, literally the angle I'm looking at the page, which is again why we go back to, it is always important to stare at the same angle. And you could draw straight up. You could draw with a paper, like more in vertical. You could draw whatever, but I always recommend, and I remember my art teacher, that if you're looking for consistency, try to be consistent in your angles where you're approaching the page. But that's not necessarily the right answer for every piece of art. Sometimes you want something different. It's so funny when I remember, if you draw things upside down, and this is a good little trick. So you look at this and go, okay, it looks right. If you flip it upside down, I don't know if it's going to work here because this is just off the top of my head, but like it looks flatter, right? Same guy, but it looks a little flatter and more inverted. But to my eye, the way I'm sitting here looking at this here, it looks a little rounder to me. And again, it's because A, I'm not a professional. B, it's the angle that you're going to be looking at it. So a lot of times if you're drawing something that has to be upside down, it's very often it might be better that you actually, you might find differing results, I guess is what I'm saying, if you draw that upside down. Like if Snake Eyes here was dropping in from above, right? If I drew Snake Eyes upside down here, he might look different than if I flipped it, drew him normally, and then flipped it back. You see what I'm saying? Same Snake Eyes, same skill level, same drawing, same visor, all that stuff. But a lot of it's just the angle you approach the page. So that's it for today, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know what you think. Seriously, please reach out to me at joeandjoepod at gmail, joeandjoepod at gmail.com, joeandjoepod at Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. If you guys like this, maybe we'll do more next week. I do have a fun interview coming up that I'm not sure when it'll air, but it's one I've been dying to do for a while. But this is a lot of fun, and this is page 1 of, there's a whole lot of this stuff. There's Sky Strikers, and see, this is that grid page. There's Major Blood. Next issue is Zartan and CoverGirl, I think. So there's a lot to do. So this is Draw with Joe, episode 1. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Now you Joe, and Joeing is half the battle.